Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. Hello, and welcome to Friday Digest this afternoon. Thank you for joining us. I am Kristen Harbeson, the Political Director for Maryland LCV, and your host for this afternoon. I am thrilled to be joined by Kimberly Armstrong, who will be to talk about this afternoon's topic of conversation is community solar, which is an issue that is near and dear to my heart and to the heart of many of us. Our goal with these Friday Digests, for those of you who've been it before, you've heard this already. Our goal is to provide you with information, tools, and resources to be an informed and active advocate. And we want the agenda for these virtual meetings to be driven by your interests and needs. So please keep us posted about what you want to hear. We've got just about a month left of legislative session, and we really want to know what you want to hear about. The easiest way to provide this information is to fill out the survey you'll receive at the end of the program. As you join, if you can type your name into the chat and where you're tuning in from, and as we move through this half hour we have today, please type your questions and comments in the Q&A or in the chat box, and we'll try to get to as many of them as we possibly can. For today's Friday Digest, we have special guest Kimberly Armstrong from Solar United Neighbors and board member for Maryland League of Conservation Voters, and Charlie Coggeshall, Mid-Atlantic Regional Director for the Coalition for Community Solar Access, the trade group for community solar developers. So thank you both for joining us so much. And as I said, we are here today to talk about one of Maryland League of Conservation Voters' top priorities this year, which is a bill to make our community solar pilot program permanent and working for everyone. Maryland was one of the pioneers in the idea of community solar and set it up as a pilot program, which is set to sunset in 2024. So it's critical that we make sure that this important program continue past the end of next year. And to do it, we need to pass a bill this year to prevent market disruption. So before we get started, I want to name that this is an incredibly timely moment to be holding this conversation. Since our bill was voted out of the Public Utilities Subcommittee in the House Economic Matters Committee yesterday afternoon, which is its first step in passage, and we're hoping to see it voted out of the full committee this afternoon and onto the floor next week. So it will be what we call making crossover. Which is on March 20th, which is the time when you absolutely need to get a bill through to make sure that it will be heard in proper order in the second chamber. So just to bring our viewers up to speed, Charlie, can you start by just outlining very briefly what community solar is and its role in meeting our state goals for renewable energy generation?
Sure. Thank you, Kristen. Thanks for having me. So community solar is a industry that really kind of kicked off probably 10 years ago in Colorado with some pilot programs. Maryland was actually kind of a first mover in 2015 with their program getting off the ground. But today it is, in over a couple dozen states, and actual kind of community solar projects are in something like 40 states, but big established programs like Maryland's is more around the 20 to 25 area. But the reason that it's become so popular and the reason that we're excited to be pushing this permanent program legislation and that policymakers are also excited about it is because it enables access for customers to distributed generation, kind of more direct, tangible relationship with a solar project, particularly if you're unable to have those kind of benefits yourself with an on-site solar system. So many of us are renters. Many of us have homes that maybe we own, but can't put solar panels on because you have big trees. You don't want to remove those trees. You've got other reasons, financial reasons, that you don't want to make that move. You're in an apartment, you're in whatever, have homeowner association rules that don't allow it. So this provides access to everybody, literally anybody with an electricity bill that is in the service territory where the program is being offered potentially could be, joining a community solar project. And the way it sort of works functionally is that typically there's sort of a third party, a developer that develops a project. These are anywhere between, it could be on a rooftop, could be some stuff on a commercial rooftop, but there's an ability to leverage some economies of scale. So these might be 20 acres, 30 acres, like decent sized project, where the developer, the owner of the project, will market it to customers and say, hey, sign up for this project. You will have no kind of upfront cost, no really commitments other than signing up and being a subscriber to it. The utility will send, all the generation from the project into the grid. So they're not going to send the generation to your house. They're going to send, the project's just sending energy into the grid. It's located somewhere in the utility service territory. It might not be in your neighborhood. Maybe it is. Maybe it's in your county. As long as it's in the same utility service territory, that's the primary rule. But what the customer is going to receive is an economic benefit on their bill based on the amount of generation that they've subscribed to in the project. We don't like to compare too closely to kind of stocks or securities because there's potential violations with that. But that's kind of the idea a little bit, is that you have an ownership share in a project and you're receiving sort of dividends based on the generation from the project. And you can use that to reduce your electricity cost. And so that's a real important kind of factor here too. I think that differentiates community solar from the retail supplier world. So I know, some of you all might have retail supplier for your energy supply arrangement in Maryland. In that arrangement, you're potentially going to be a little bit more vulnerable to kind of price fluctuations in the market. And there's been some bad stories, I think, out there around that as well. But with community solar, these projects are locking in more certainty over a longer period of time, 20, 25 years. And the developers really don't pursue a project unless they think they can provide savings to the customer. And so anyone that's a subscriber now, I think, can probably attest to that. But that is kind of a prerequisite for CCSA in the markets that we try to open up and that really end up bearing success, is that the ability for subscribers to have savings. So there's no kind of gimmicks there. It seems too good to be true, but that's really kind of the reality of it. So that was probably kind of a longer-winded way of describing what community solar is, but I covered multiple bases there. So
no, that was great. Thanks, Charlie. And yeah, and I think the analogy I like to use, and I think that this is the way I think of it, is it's like joining the community started agriculture. You're buying a share of the produce that is being created on a farm. You don't own the farm, but you're getting a share of the produce that is being created on that farm. So it's and I do want to get back to, I think we want to talk a little bit about the difference between community solar and the retail suppliers, because that's can get pretty complicated. And I think it's confusing to a lot of people. It's certainly confusing to me. And I know something about this, having worked with you for, however many months and years we've been working together. But I do want to, so one of the things that we talked about, so this program was brand new in 2015 when Maryland started this pilot program. It was a new idea, right? But it's taken off, as you were saying. And you work regionally on community solar, and you've got a sense of sort of how this is working across the country. What ideas are we using in this bill to make the program better that's drawing on not national models? Because there are now many other states who are working on this.
Yeah, that's a good question. So, the Maryland's pilot program, which has been in place since 2015, 2016, it kind of tested out different ways of doing things. And that made sense, I think, at that time, because it was still relatively new nationally. But today we have the experience not only from the pilot program, but also from what's happening across other markets in the country to know what some of the best practices are, and also kind of the momentum of the industry, kind of what's next. I think the biggest one or element here in the permanent program legislation that we're pushing right now is to require that every project have at least 40% of its capacity go to low to moderate income customers. And so this sort of concept of equity is kind of at the heart of community solar. And if the low to moderate income customers are being overlooked, then we're not selling. Our story, has some holes in it. And so this ensures that everybody, literally all types of customers, everybody has the ability to potentially be participating in the project and benefiting from a community solar project directly. And that is kind of a national trend. I cover the Mid-Atlantic. I've just got Virginia, Maryland, New Jersey. In Virginia, they established a program a couple of years ago. They have a requirement that 30% of all capacity go to low to moderate income customers. New Jersey, the way its sort of incentive structure works, results in really like 51% going to LMI. California just established through legislation and program also has the 51%. The Biden administration has a strong interest in leveraging community solar to support low to moderate income kind of benefits, and there's specific kind of tax incentives that community solar is sort of well positioned to try to take advantage of. So that's, I think, probably the biggest piece of our legislation that is kind of in line with the momentum of the whole nation and leveraging kind of the best practices there for the industry. The other one that I'll flag is something called consolidated billing, which means that instead of having this kind of arrangement with the project and the owner of the project where you send them kind of part of your sort of charge, so you're receiving a credit value on your electricity bill, and as part of the arrangement, you're using some of that credit value to pay towards the subscriber organization or the owner of the project to help recover the cost of the project. It sounds like it's a fee or a cost for you, but it's being deducted from the credit value, so you're not actually going to experience like a premium or an increase in your electricity rate. It's going to go down. Your cost is going to go down. But right now, you have to do that with two separate kind of transactions. You got one credit coming from your utility, and then you're sending a payment to the subscriber organization separately. By having it all consolidated onto one electricity bill, where the utility, you're just using the same electricity bill that you have already, but now there's a line item that says community solar or your subscription credit and charge associated with community solar. So it's all in one place, and it's a real kind of consumer protection, makes things easier. It also, particularly for kind of an LMI customer, allows for more sort of accessibility and more options in the state, where there's been some challenges with community solar and being able to reach some of those customers because some of those customers aren't able to kind of check or have a credit card to pay for a subscription, or they're participating in other utility programs which kind of prevent them from being able to take advantage of a community solar subscription. And I do want to kind of clarify too, because I think it sounds, the way I'm talking about it, I feel like it can sound like, oh, wait a minute, so they've got to pay these subscriber organizations, but you said that this is all about like savings. And I want to clarify that the payment they're making is based on kind of a portion of the credit value that they're receiving based on their ownership or their subscription in the project. So it's not kind of a new charge on top of what they would be paying their electricity bill anyways. In fact, it will always be like a net credit. It's going to be something that's bringing down their electricity cost. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. But those two things, having requirements for LMI participation across the program, low to moderate income customer participation, and then consolidated billing. Those are two like very big changes to Maryland's program that are aligning with the kind of national trends and best practices.
Great. Well, thank you. Yeah, that's really helpful. When I think about consolidated billing, I like, again, going back to the analogy of the CSA of the farm, like the way it works now, you're paying one, you're paying for the one place for the electrons being created and one place for the electrons being delivered. Is like you're paying the farm for the produce, but then you're paying somebody else entirely to bring you the produce, which is less efficient. And a lot harder to manage. So turning to you, Kimberly. So you're with Solar United Neighbors, and you're the Maryland director. Is that right?
Correct. I am the Maryland program director for Solar United Neighbors.
So can you talk a little bit about what Solar United Neighbors is? And my understanding is you help to promote community solar, and that you yourself are a community solar subscriber. So can you talk about Solar United Neighbors, what your group does, and why it is so important? Why this bill is so important for you?
So we are a nonprofit, and what we do is we help people to go solar. and we mainly focus through our co-ops is rooftop solar. However, we do educate around community solar because I get questions all the time. So say for instance, we have someone that may want to get rooftop solar, but like as Charlie mentioned, they live in an area that's very woody and they have a lot of trees and a lot of shading. So they may not be able to get rooftop solar, but they can get community solar. So then there's a whole education around community solar, like Charlie talked about what it is, how you can participate in it as well. And yes, I live in Baltimore City. I have rooftop solar and I have community solar. And you may say, well, why do you have both? So I have both because I have a 4 kilowatt system. However, it's not big enough. It's not a big enough system to offset all of my energy. So if I want to reduce some more of my energy, I subscribe into community solar, which also helps me reduce my bill. So as Charlie was talking about, when you get the credit, you'll actually see the credit on your bill, right? And then you'll get an invoice from whomever your community solar subscriber host is. You'll get a invoice from them, and it'll say maybe like $20 or $25 or something like that. So you may when you look at your bill, you'll see the credit, but then when you get your invoice, you'll see the same amount and you just send that to them. And sometimes it's like $20, $25. And so community solar has really evolved because when I first got into community solar, like in 2015, there was no talk about low moderate income participation or anything. So now it's an opportunity with a lot of the legislation and also trying to make it permanent. There's a big push for trying to include everyone. So people who live in condos, people that may live in public housing, people that may say they have enough roof space, but they just don't want solar on their roof. So there's a lot of different options why people may want to participate in community solar. And really, consolidated billing is just an easier way for people to pay their bill. That's just let's just make it simple, right? We don't have to really make it, overcomplicate things. It's just the easier way for people to just pay the bill. Now, I would prefer to just have one bill, and when I pay my gas and electric bill, that is all taken care of, than paying my gas and electric bill and then paying another bill. That would just take a whole lot more stress and brain power out of my head to just make it simple. And then two is I like to try and demystify the myth of what community solar is and what retail choice is. So retail choice is like when you choose your supplier. So I'm gonna just say something off the top of my head, like it could be retail choice Bluebird Energy, right? That's totally different from what community solar is. Those are two different things, and I have to explain it to people a lot because they get confused. And with retail suppliers, you can get energy from anywhere. It could be, they could say that it's 100% wind, they could say it's 50% solar, but it could be coming from New Jersey or somewhere else, off the grid. But with community solar, you have to be in the utility territory. So therefore, if I'm in BGE, then the project has to be in BGE. If I'm in PEPCO, then my project has to be in PEPCO. Those are the kind of things that I like to help people to educate. And usually when I do in-person presentations, I like to show my utility bill to people. And then I also have like a little check stub that I have from Sunrun because my rooftop solar is from Sunrun. So every couple, and then this may not be the case for everybody, but this is just me. So I may get like a little check for like maybe $90 every 6 months because of my overproduction of my rooftop solar, right? So I always like to tell people is if I can participate in something that I have to pay anyway, because we got to pay gas and electric, right? We have to have it. And if I can get a little teeny bit of my money back, then I'm all for it because I've been in my house almost 30 years and I've never gotten anything from Baltimore Gas and Electric until I got solar. So I kind of like put it into those kind of contexts. But also when you talk about community solar, that's a way for everybody to participate. I mean, whether you live in a rural community, whether you live in the suburbs, whether you live in the inner city, wherever you live at, it's an opportunity for people, for everybody to participate. So that's one of the reasons that I really promote and like to promote and talk about community solar, what it is and how you can participate in it.
Yeah, that's so important. And the difference, I think, I mean, when I think, I think that with community solar, because it's a specific project and you're subscribing to a specific project, if I want to know where my energy is coming from, I can go visit that place where it's coming from. It is a specific project that I can drive to see, that I can go see. Whereas with retail choice, that's not necessarily the case. They're buying renewable energy from somewhere. But you don't necessarily know where it's coming from. It's coming from someplace, and it's not that it's not also then renewable energy, but it's not the community portion of the community solar. Is it's someplace where it's someplace it's someplace specific. You can know exactly where your energy is coming from. Is that fair? Is that fair, Charlie or Kimberly?
Yeah, and also too with community solar. And we may have some sites here, maybe Charlie may know better than me, but community solar doesn't have to be just like these big developers. It could be a community-owned solar array. So communities themselves can get together and say, hey, we want to build a community solar array and do it themselves. So it's not always, just the big utilities or just, big developers. Communities can actually do it themselves.
Yeah, and that actually goes to one of the questions from the audience. I know that they're about can small churches be included in community solar projects? And there are I think there are two parts to that question. One is can churches get their power from community solar projects, but also can they? I know that there are at least two congregations that I know of in Montgomery County who have created their own community solar projects for their congregation. So there are two ways in which there are different ways that they can create. But can you talk about so the question is, who can participate in community solar? How can businesses or churches or nonprofits participate? I'm not sure which one of you would be best to answer that question. Charlie, you look like you want to. Go ahead.
Yeah, I can give. So yeah, absolutely. I think it's partly kind of a first come first serve for some of these projects, and I think this is one of the one of the reasons we're making it a permanent program is that it will lift sort of the race for available project capacity kind of opportunities, which will allow for more types of sort of modest size kind of projects and like truly kind of community oriented driven development projects. But right now, potentially church could do either way. They could say, tell all their congregation, who wants to kind of pool resources together to install a project. You probably do like an RFP to get a developer to make a bid on, developing a project somewhere. And then you all go in on it, sign up with the Public Service Commission so that you can get credits. The utility will issue credits on your electricity bill based on your generation. Or it could be through, the CCSA. We have kind of the bigger sort of sophisticated developers that are doing these projects. They have big banks that are, backing them and taking advantage of the tax incentives and all those things. And the idea there would be, it's just sort of simplified. You as a customer don't have to really do anything. You just, you get marketed to, you decide you want to sign up, you're done. Then you start getting the benefits on your bill. And obviously there's pros and cons of either of those approaches. On that latter part, the same idea, church could sign up for a subscription with a big kind of sophisticated project and developer, or church could decide to do it themselves and figure it out. So it really could go kind of either way.
Great. And another question that we've gotten from is from our good friend Laurel, who or what entity or what fund is funding the LMI and non-LMI discounts to regulated rates. Can you talk a little bit more about sort of how that works?
Yeah, so at least
And
with
by,
the,
sorry, an LMI means low and moderate income. There's a provision in the bill, as Charlie was explaining, that requires 40% of every project to be hold for low and moderate income subscribers and those who are in overburdened and underserved communities. So I just want to get away from the alphabet soup and just make sure that we're clarifying that.
Yep. Yeah, no, I think it's a good point. I can definitely be guilty of nomenclature and not thinking about my audience. So definitely just ask questions if I'm using acronyms or whatever. Yes, so similar to net metering or on-site solar, that customer is consuming generation, so they're offsetting what they're consuming from the utility, and then they might be producing a little extra, like Kimberly was talking about, where you're sending some generation back to the utility, in which case the utility then owes you credits for the generation you send into the grid. And so the way community solar is similar to that is that it's sending all of its generation into the grid, and the utility needs to compensate somebody for that generation that's going into the grid. And the owner of the project or some designee is telling the utility, send the compensation for that project to all these different subscribers. And the way that kind of compensation is determined right now is just based on your retail rate. It's the same thing that you're paying for your electricity cost. And that's how net metering works, and that's how community solar works. I think further down the road, it'll probably become a more sophisticated rate structure. So like New York's kind of jumped well ahead of a lot of the other markets, because they developed what we call sort of like a value of solar or value of distributed energy resource rate. A lot of times there's storage coupled with the projects, because there's like an incentive from a rate standpoint to do that. And I think that's where Maryland is going to go as well. Eventually, I think all the states really are. California is already there. They pretty much, every solar project's got storage coupled with it now. Maryland's not sort of been penetrated high enough to kind of reach that same level of sophistication need, but it will get there. And at a point with the net metering program, which right now it's capped at something called a gigawatt, 3,000 gigawatts. I think when it reaches that point, I think there's going to be kind of reconsideration of, okay, what's next from a rate compensation standpoint. But just like back to the question, I think basically it's the utility that's compensating these projects. There isn't some additional incentive fund that's being made available, and then it's upon the subscriber organizations to determine what level of discount they're going to offer to the subscriber. And the discount being, if that customer is getting $100 in credits based on their ownership in the project or subscription to the project, they can keep, let's say, 20% of that and send 80% to the subscriber organization, which is used to recover the cost of the project. And there's kind of different numbers for different folks, different discounts for different types of customers, but it's an area I would say of sort of like competition, from a marketing standpoint. And then obviously just what the economics and market will bear.
Fantastic. Thank you. Well, I want to give Kimberly the last word. So we've got, as I said at the beginning, this is sort of the compelling time that for people to reach out to their legislators and say, pass this bill. So Kimberly, what would you say to people, like, what is your message about why it is so important that they support this bill for the communities?
Yeah, I was just sitting here thinking is that one of the reasons really why is because it allows access for everybody to be included. So just thinking about Laurel, who works with a lot of senior citizens, who works with a lot of other people in the community, people that may be getting subsidies like for energy assistance. It allows them to participate in community solar too, but also it helps them to even reduce the utility costs, which also reduces the burden of just everyday living. And energy is something that we all have to have. Like, you cannot go without energy, so we can make it more accessible and more affordable for everybody. Then I think it's a win-win for not just the developers, but also for the participants, but also society as a whole, while we're also trying to save the planet.
Great. Well, I think that's a fabulous place to end the show. As anybody who's talked to me in the last year and a half knows, I can talk about this all day. And I know you both can too. But so thank you both so much for being here, and thanks to everybody who joined us. I think we're out of time for today, but look forward to, but please take action today to support the community floor legislation. It's HB 908, which will be voted out of committee today, hopefully. And then SB 613, which we'll see hopefully in the Senate in coming days as well. So reach out, contact your legislators, and thank you so much for being part of this. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.